Welcome to the Mike on Much podcast. I am your host, Mike Veerman, and I am here with my friend and trusty producer, Max Kerman. Max, what's going on?
You know, it feels good to be back home. I was in the Midwest this past weekend.
You've been on the road?
Detroit, Chicago, Minneapolis. It's good.
Good times?
Yeah, you know what? We've been hacking away at those markets. Well, it's Detroit and Chicago specifically. And we sold out both nights.
Holy shit.
Like club shows, but it was rammed and awesome.
Still, when was the first time, for instance, you went to Chicago, let's say?
Ooh, probably like 2010 or something. But like, it almost doesn't count if like the next time you went back is like 18 months later or something. But in the last like 3 years, we've been, I had a concerted effort to be like going back to those places. It's funny though, when it comes to our Kel shows outside of Canada, we're always very aware of like what the Canadian ratio is in the crowd. Like London, England, there's going to be Canadians there. New York City, there'll be Canadians there. But places like Philadelphia don't really have that many Canadians. Detroit definitely has some Canadians.
Do you think they'll travel down to catch the show?
Oh, yeah, totally. It's a cheaper ticket. It's a bit of a chance for a road trip.
More intimate.
More intimate. That's a better way of putting it. And I was very happy, though, because the Chicago show was probably, I want to say like 85 to 90% Americans.
Hey.
So that felt really good. But the problem is there's still some f***ing Canadian yahoos at the show who just insist on being so obnoxious. Like, for instance, one guy was just holding up, he was making a T sign with his hand and then the 6 sign.
Oh, he's from Toronto.
And he's wearing a Toronto hat and like literally, and he was wasted the whole show. And we played for like an hour and 40 minutes. During a quiet song, some guy at the back just started screaming, like it was an acoustic song. Keita Bella! Keita Bella! I just remember like, you're embarrassing everybody here. Okay, you're embarrassing yourself, and you're embarrassing the band, you're embarrassing our country. Stop that.
I guess what I was getting at though is it's like when you see the growth, do you feel like progress is happening quick enough down there?
You know what? It feels like, and I'd say this is generally the case with the band, is like the work we put in is the work we get out. And it's like, we've spent a lot of time in Canada grinding away up here and like trying to build the band. And us playing 2 sold out shows at Massey Hall is a result of like us grinding it here. It's also a result of some of the infrastructure that we have up here in Canada that we don't have in America. But it's like down there, it's like you got to almost work harder for it because there's so many more bands that are coming through Chicago or Minneapolis or Philadelphia like every day of the week, and you got to put in the time. And nobody has proven that more than Frank Turner to me, because Frank Turner is a British guy, and he and for our listeners, you should go check out the interview you did with him.
One of our first podcasts,
2 or 3. But he, since 2007, has been going to America, and the first time he ever played there was probably to 25 people and then 50 people. And he would sleep on people's couches, and every promoter in America in every town probably has had Frank Turner sleep on his couch at one point or another. I mean it.
Yeah.
And then 100 people, and then 400 people, and then 5. And now he's getting to the point where he's doing probably 4,000 tickets in Chicago. But it wasn't like he just showed up with a hot single and a hot blonde single. No, a hot radio single, and was taking over the town. It was a result of the work you put in. So for us, it's like it was almost, for me, like just as gratifying in a slightly different way to sell like 500 tickets into Detroit or Chicago than to sell 5,000 in Toronto, just because it's like, oh, okay, this is good when things are going in the right direction. So
yeah.
That felt really good.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, and it's funny because Trump sort of derailed everything, because we hadn't seen each other since you played Massey Hall, 2 sold out nights. And Shane and I, we wanted to ask you a bunch of questions about Massey, what it felt like, all that. But then Trump gets elected on Tuesday. So the next time we see each other, we didn't even get to talk about it. We were
despondent.
A little despondent, yeah. So anyway, I wanted to know, how was it?
It was awesome. For a very long time, playing in Toronto was always very nerve-wracking to me, because we always felt like the scrappy Hamilton band. And Toronto, in my mind, everybody in the crowd was a reviewer from Now magazine.
Sure.
Who was just going to like roll their eyes at us. And I think the expectations going to Massey Hall were really high. So I had that in the back of my head. I was like, don't think this is going to be the most magical thing. There's probably things that are going to go wrong. Temper your expectations. But the shows were incredible, and like more than I could ask for. Like each night was different. Each night was really special, and like I really savored every moment. It was awesome.
What was better, night 1 or night 2? You have to pick one. No, don't do the I can't pick my children.
No, but you know what? I'd say Saturday night was more raucous. It felt like more of like a crazy Saturday night rock show. Friday night, I think due to the nature of the set list and the way it was written, was a little more tempered. But playing in a venue like Massey Hall, those tempered moments actually maybe are more meaningful. Like we've played for the first time ever passenger seat, which we had never played before live. But that song was like made to be performed in Massey Hall. It was funny though. Everybody was standing.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, so people stand because they're all seated. It's all, there's no pit. There's no general admission, right?
Yeah, it's seated.
So everybody stands in their seat, but do people like go into the aisles and sort of like dance, or do they dance at their seat?
Everybody started dancing at their seat. All of Massey Hall up into the very last row was all standing, with the exception of my fucking parents and my uncle and his girlfriend, who we put dead center in the first row in the balcony.
They're right in your eye line?
Yeah, right in the eye line. And they're literally the best seats in the house. It was like the first balcony, first row. So if I had put them anywhere else, they would have had to stand up because their view would have been blocked. But because they had the best seats, they didn't stand up. And I was like, guys, come on. Everybody else is doing it. I know you're old, but come on, stand up. But they had a great time.
They go to both nights?
They just went to Saturday. No, they went to Friday night. Right. Lauren came Saturday night.
Oh, Lauren
and my sister, came on Saturday night.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. So did all the girlfriends and wives show up for this one?
Yeah, everybody was there. A lot of family members were there. It was great. Actually, the most exciting thing for me, though, and I wish Shane were here for this, but I've been really trying to be health conscious. Like even in the last year, just like trying to improve my diet. Diet's something I just never thought about ever. And probably because of my disposition, I'd like look at a recent photo. Like if someone just took a photo of me, I'd be like, that looks pretty good. Does the trick, and carry on with my day. And I think, but then if I've ever seen a photo of myself from 6 months ago, I'm like, oh God, come on. I was disappointed with myself. But in the moment, I'm always kind of fine with it.
Yeah.
But the more I think the Instagram generation has taken over, and the more maybe responsibility I feel to be like a good looking lead singer.
Sure.
I've been more conscious of eating right and getting some exercise.
The Chris Martin deal.
Yeah, exactly. And also I feel like our show has been more active. And I want to be
more physical.
More physical. It really has. And so I want to be respectful of that. And I'm not getting any younger either. So I need to I'm competing against a bunch of hunky 22-year-old lead singers, right?
Totally.
So the exciting thing though was, so I'd been, by the way, shout out to Ashley, our manager.
She's great.
She listens to the show. Oh. And she's sort of like the Max Whisperer.
Oh.
Yeah. She from about a year ago, she's such a pleasant person, and she's full of good energy. She can kind of get away with saying anything. So she'd be like, so Max, are we going to be skinny for that photo shoot we're doing? And then I'd be like, I guess I am going to be skinny for that photo shoot. And then she'll be like, Max, no eating until after festival season. I'd be like, I guess I can't eat until after festival season. So Ashley has been sort of like the Max Whisperer. But as a result, Lauren has been very happy with the results. Lauren's like, you've never looked better. So I'm happy with
You were very thin. I feel like people comment on this all the time.
Not very thin, just
healthy. You feel healthy?
I feel healthy and more. And it's literally the difference between two things. It's literally two things. Going into a truck stop and getting an awesome slice of pizza every goddamn time, which is probably what I used to do. And also going to a truck stop and going, I could probably go for some chocolate and gummy bears because I have such a sweet tooth. If you just don't do that every time, then you can have some benefits.
So what are we talking? Once a week now?
Yeah, I just and it's I had tacos today and whatever. It's and I had pizza on Sunday. It's not like I'm not eating. It's just I like to eat out. I love to eat out. And I've just found that if you can go have the experience of eating out, but then find a slightly healthier option. For instance, when we first started touring, Panera Bread wasn't a thing, but now Panera Bread is available at every exit on the highway in America.
What's the deal with Panera Bread?
Panair Bread has awesome salads, really delicious salads. And obviously it's not as good as a burger, but when you're sitting in a van for the preceding 5 hours, you just feel better about it.
Sure.
So it's if you're able to think a little bit more long-term, it's better. But anyway, I'm getting all this because I'd been really healthy for the 2 weeks leading up to Massey Hall, and I just had Saturday Night Circle as I'm going to go crazy. And so Lauren and I got drunk together after the show, and
was there an after party? I was going to get this.
There was an after
Both
party.
nights?
More on Saturday. I had to kind of keep together on Friday.
Was there did you have a venue?
It was the basement bar at Massey Hall.
Yeah, okay. I've been. There's a piano down there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was an old school bar.
So that was the after party.
That was the after party. But then
open bar.
No, not open bar.
You cheap bastard. I'm just kidding.
Frank Turner, who opened the shows, he was DJing at some bar on Queen West. I forgot what it was called. And so I went to go see him, and I was having a night.
Yeah.
And it was also the daylight savings night. So we got more time at the bar or whatever that was. It daylight savings?
Yeah, you get an extra hour after last call.
Which is kind of cool. So Lauren and I end up leaving. On our way back to the hotel, I order a large pizza.
Love it.
And then I was like, Lauren, we got 45 minutes to kill. And there's a 7-Eleven. And I bought $20 worth of chips, penny candy, like gummy bears and chocolate. And we basically ate all of it before the pizza came. Like think about $20 worth of like
it's a lot of candy,
junk food. And then we ate all the pizza.
And you had all the pizza.
Like there wasn't a slice left.
I love it.
So it was amazing.
Do you want to get to Dragonette?
Let's do it.
All right. Today on the show, Maxi Boy, we got Dragonette.
Yeah. I've actually come across Dragonette at various Canadian music biz events. Really nice people.
Super nice.
But in their press release, they mentioned that there was a split, not professionally.
Well, it's funny you say that because, when you sent the questions for prep, like, they say, so for listeners, when someone's coming in and they're sort of doing the car wash, as we call it, and they're doing the rounds for all the different channels we have here at 299 Queen Street West, we'll get usually some music, like an album preview. We'll get like a press release. We'll get like a bio so that we can do our research sort of on the surface, and then we like to dig a little deeper. But in their press release, they'd mentioned that Dan and Martina had broken up. And I thought that was an odd thing to mention because it's like, in some ways, like you're inviting an interviewer to ask about that. Whereas normally I normally wouldn't ask or delve into, people's relationships, especially within a band. But I guess it is such a part of their story that when I did end up asking it, it was interesting,
What was their reaction in the room? How did it feel?
Well, just before I'd asked about that, we talked about social media and them saying that, it's not really their thing to post a lot on Instagram. Or, they're sort of adjusting to that part of being in a pop band. And when I ended up getting the question about them breaking up, I thought, one, it was interesting that they put in the press release.
Yeah.
And especially for people who are saying, we don't share a ton about our stuff on social media and all that stuff. And they just said, it was such a big part of the story. It'd be weird not to talk about it, especially if somebody were to talk about our relationship and like, is it weird being in a band with, your husband or wife, boyfriend, girlfriend? And then they have to be like, actually we broke up. Like to avoid the awkwardness of either not giving an answer or being uncomfortable. It's just like, let's just get it out in the open.
Yeah.
And so then when I asked, the question specifically was, did you guys ever think of maybe disbanding or dissolving the band when a breakup like that happens? Because, that's hard to do when you're not in a band or in a business or you work together or you create together. And it was interesting in the room, it was kind of like, very thoughtful answer. And I felt like Martina and Joel were a little more light, not light, but basically, no, like, press on. We built this amazing thing.
Kept it positive.
And Dan, I felt, dug a little deeper, and he was like, "No, of course we thought about it. This is my life was one way, and I won't obviously give you the whole answer because you got to listen to the interview. Mm-hmm. So there's something to look out for.
What's interesting is that I feel like a lot of big American pop stars like would put that like. Celebrity dating is such like a big part of like the story when anybody puts out an album in America, like especially like Taylor Swift, like every time she puts out a new record, so much of the narrative is like, is this song about John Mayer? Is this song about Harry Styles? Is like, and there's definitely an element where you feel like it's being played up like a lot because it's such a good marketing angle.
Yeah.
And it's a way to get people talking about their album. In this particular case though, it didn't like, at first I was like, are they trying to do like this sort of like Taylor Swift, like tabloid style? Are they or are they not? Or is this song about them? But it's like, it seemed like they're just doing it out of Canadian politeness. Do you know what I mean?
It's such an interesting observation. Yeah. Like, it was reflected, I think, in the making of this record. Yeah. And, it is a part of the story, but you nailed it. It almost feels like, it was like, well, it's like, it could be awkward down the road. So we might as well just get it out.
Yeah. We don't want to put anybody in an uncomfortable position in the interview room who thinks that we're still dating.
As opposed to exploiting it.
Yeah. It's supposed to be like, guys,
headlines.
Check it out. This is the big record where, Martina talks about dumping Dan or whatever.
I don't know if that's how it went down.
Or however it happened, but I'm saying like that's not what happened.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. All right, you want to get to Dragonette?
Let's get to it.
Some shit went down last night.
Yeah.
Were you guys watching any of that?
Oh yeah.
Who
was it? Show.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Like during sort of the heart of it, or
Yeah.
like 10 something or other. I had
When
made
it was
the-
getting scary, just as it was.
just yeah.
it becoming reality?
Yeah.
Do you guys follow that stuff regularly?
Sadly, yeah.
I mean, this year more so than any other time, it's been pretty riveting
Yeah.
and pretty exceptional.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts, first of all, on him winning last night? For our listeners, we're talking about Trump. This will probably air in a week, but last night Trump won the presidency of the United States of America.
I think I don't know. I feel kind of shocked and a bit petrified, but I think I'm praying that all of that, all the shit he was saying was just like rhetoric and
Marketing plan.
saber wielding as opposed to actual plans. Just when you look back at what he was actually saying about like repealing the Paris climate, whatever the word is I'm looking for, treaty,
Right.
and like abortion laws and gay marriage and all that stuff. It's like, what will actually happen if if that goes down? Like, I don't know.
On the other hand, I'm trying to find a silver lining in it. But what is clear is that country is literally divided down the middle about how to move forward. And if but it seems like all the checks and balances that could institutionally like protect that mandate are also out the window, and that both Congress and Senate are Republican. And the challenge, I think, is that it's even though within those groups, within the Republican Party, that there's a lot of dissension amongst them, that they still manage to, I think it's going to be very difficult for independent thinking within the party because of the mandate that they've been handed, and also to some degree I think the revenge that they want to the
anger they're expressing, and
but also just wanting to undo the work of the previous president, not for the merits of what he has done but simply because it was an Obama era policy, which most of his policies that were put in were he had to push through with a presidential mandate as opposed to having support in Congress. And so it's really easy to ascribe like all of these whatever are the Obama laws to one crazy guy who decided to push through his unique agenda for America. And so that it's the American system is supposed to maintain balanced government, but we've seen that didn't happen in the past because of how partisan it is, and the only thing we can hope for is that somewhere within those Republicans who are in Congress that there is some measure of balanced thinking.
Right.
I can't remember what the context was, but I think it was, I don't know, this is my like positive thinking mantra right now, is that we're going forward we're progressing and we're progressive, but the line to where we want to end up is not straight, and this is like part of the crooked line, but we go forward and we will hopefully continue on whatever like Obama achieved. This is just like a little, hopefully
just a detour in the path.
Detour in the path forward.
I mean, musically, when something seismic like this happens that affects so many people, do you guys feel like writing music? Do you feel like sort of creating and I don't know, in a positive way, sort of like using that energy or that anger, or however you feel about it, I mean, some people feel positively about this turn of events, but I mean, is it something that where you guys would be like, oh, let's go create, like, let's write some music, let's either as an outlet or as a way to maybe speak to these issues?
I don't know if individually or as a group we would do that, having just put out a record. Generally, I think by the time
Right.
you're done with that, you're like, I never want to see the inside of a studio. Conveniently, you could repurpose a lot of the lyrics from our last record to talk about the state of the American politics. But it's interesting that music has always reflected social opinion, or has historically.
I think that right now, though, is a very like non-political time in music, less so in other media. But
And I wouldn't say we're a particularly
no, we're not.
political band.
We're not.
Right.
we've
So
never
I don't
been,
know
but-
that I don't know that we're a good example
But I
of a
almost think
band that
it's
would
like-
be charged up, at least creatively, by this. We're certainly charged up as people, but I don't know that it's like, okay, let's get back in the studio tomorrow and
Funnel it into the music.
yeah.
But I almost think that it's like it's off trend to be political in music or something in a bad way, in a negative way.
Yeah,
it's like people you get kind of laughed out of the room if you are singing about political issues, and
Like it almost seems too
Human issues.
heavy-handed or
it's like not
self-righteous.
cool
Or not
something.
Beyonce pulls it off.
Yeah.
You know, obviously she's an exception, maybe not the rule.
Yeah, I think so.
Or do you think people are sort of like having a bit of a laugh?
I think, but I feel
No,
like
I think that she does it though it's like almost covert.
If that is
thing.
true, what you say, if there is anything that can change people's like interest in political,
Yeah, I think this could
politically
have
related art, this will
this
definitely
could have
push
an
it,
effect
push
on
it,
that
in-
trend.
yeah,
Oh my god, my phone.
push it in that direction.
it is. However, I mean, hip hop, for example, has been traditionally a music of protest, and I was actually, I don't remember, I know virtually nothing about hip hop artists, but that I'm exposed to so much more of it now because it has become much more mainstream and in vogue. And if you separate out the really poppy commercial side of hip hop, you're still exposed to whatever, like more people know now about Public Enemy and NWA and whatever than they would have, let's say, 5 years ago. And the super powerful message that's in those songs, which are, complaining about some major long-term issues for the Black community of America, somehow they're just the sound of entertainment for most people. And I think that actually what my comment was going to be before is that popular musicians used to be, like, whether it's Bob Dylan or the Beatles or whatever else, like, John Lennon was considered a dangerous person by the CIA or whatever, the FBI, and because of how much power he had to sway people politically. And I think at this point the artists and musicians have become more of a it's more of general entertainment. Like you can't exist as an artist unless you're also on Facebook and on Instagram and et cetera. The music is part of, increasingly more than ever, part of like almost an equally image-based product. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah, and just like
And
consumed.
inside that, our principal job is to be entertaining,
Can you pass
as
the
opposed
tea?
to being like political commentators.
Right.
And so, but it doesn't mean that people don't end up feeling the zeitgeist of the time. And I think perhaps, the reason why music is so poppy is because this is a real stretch, but maybe there's some truth to it, is that if you look at how much people have felt disenfranchised by their governments, as evidenced by the election that just happened, right? The futility of speaking out in any which way because the establishment is so strong. It's not surprising that pop music has been like, well, we're just going to ignore that and we're going to write
This is our
songs
escape.
about being in the club or like relationships.
Yeah.
But it is funny how that's changed. I mean, the job that we have now is directly evolved from some of the bands that came out of the 60s that were all about social upheaval, right? That's the music that we one way or another grew up on.
Yeah.
And it's maybe been sanitized a little at this point.
just a bit.
The pop landscape is actually really competitive. You're talking about that, and you guys have been super successful internationally. I mean, being a pop act, what are things you sort of enjoy about being in that realm, and then some of the maybe more negative aspects?
The travel, the lifestyle,
No, I think
the
that,
Instagram.
there's
Positive or negative?
No, those are, for the most part, it's
Both.
really, yeah.
Right? I mean, it's
no.
kind of interesting.
I find that the needing to have a social media presence and that being like such a, or just maintaining an image that has to be so pervasive into so many different mediums,
Yeah.
medias,
Media.
media. Thank you. It's amazing that you can have a voice in all these different places, but it's also, I think, a bit exhausting, and you feel a bit like
Well,
for me at least, it's like I
And we're of a generation where we kind of, I think like people 10 years younger than us, the first thing they think of when they see something cool or they're doing something cool is, how do I take a picture of this and write some witty quip about it? You know, it's like ingrained in who they are. It's, you know, social media is they've grown up with, and for us, we just kind of
came in under the wire. Yeah.
Yeah, and
We
so
started
for us,
making records before the internet.
we really have to remind ourselves to be like, okay, let's set aside some time today
engage
like,
in that.
Yeah.
engage in that.
Yeah,
And
basically make a press release every day. Here, I'm making a press release.
Yeah. Whereas kids, it's just second nature.
Of course.
They just do it because it's part of who they are. It's part of their social interaction, and it's
Their identity, they're going to share, and it's just
Yeah.
part of their everyday.
And I
So
know.
So this is a
So for
positive,
us-
is what Joel's trying to say.
for us, it's a lot more work because we don't come by it naturally. You
Right.
know? So that part is a bit of a drag from. Sometimes it's fun.
No, and I think that we have confidence in, like, I know, you know, I'm a singer. I can sing. I have a nice voice, and I can perform. I can write songs. All that stuff I have confidence in. But then there's this whole other thing that's just like, I didn't study this. I'm not a professional at
I didn't sign up for
PR,
this.
and like, I actually. You can tell right now I don't speak very well to people. I just stand on stage and do this thing that I know that I'm good at. But the other stuff is just like, I'm just making shit up and like, is this how you do it?
Yeah, is this now part of the role? Do I have to also be a
Yeah.
marketing manager
Yeah,
and
exactly.
sort of sell myself
Exactly.
effectively? Whereas it's like I just
Yeah,
have
I
to
just-
sing and write music.
Yeah.
And you can hire people to do that, but it always comes across as...
So, it feels inauthentic. I feel like people.
yeah,
can
everyone
smell
can
it.
see that and feel that, and it's not... You just can't do it.
The upsides, since we gotta turn this around.
No.
No, but the upsides to what we do in particular is, for the most part, this medium, which is our version of pop music, has been a place where we've been able to try out over the last 4 albums pretty much any kind of song we want to write, and how we want to execute it and how we want to produce it. And I think in some cases the range is almost so broad that it's hard for people to like draw a line from like a song that sounds like a 1930s that tune, Get Lucky, to, you know, something that is kind of right on the quote cutting edge of what's happening in pop now or whatever. But inside that, I think part of the many reasons that we're still doing this is because it is the place where, as musicians and as people who love music and love making music, is that we can try anything we want to do, and we learn a lot. Like even in the last 6 weeks that we've been rehearsing this tour, I was thinking, oh man, like there are times where I felt like there's nothing left for me to do in pop music. Like I play keyboards like this well, I'm not going to get substantially better in this. My ideas aren't going to be much different than where they are now. But even with a bit of concentrated work, we kind of rediscover the things that we like to do, that we're good at, the reasons why we're still making music, that have nothing to do with whether people like it or not, or how successful we're going to be, or if we're trying to chase a hit that we had, whether 2, 4, or 5 years ago or whatever. And it's pop music has, and this aspect of pop music is something that has had equally good and equally, let's say, negative results, which is there is so much music that is so broad in terms, like I can't name 5% of the genres that are out there now, but we no longer have to fit inside a really narrow box of like, this is the first song you did, this is the kind of music you are, make 5 albums that sound just like that, or whatever, 10 songs on a record that sound just like that.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, as a result, the dilution of, let's say, the brand comes at risk at a time where there's so much music coming out all the time. It's hard to have a cohesive message, and therefore, you know, that's when all the commercialism and the industry side of it comes into it. But it is a really, it's when you're making music and it feels like it's something that you are really connecting with, it's the fucking best feeling ever. And that's the one thing that I think we still get to do.
it's probably the purest place. Maybe why you start making music in the first place, outside of everything else. When you can get to that spot, you were gonna say something, Joel?
Oh no, I was just I was trying to get back to the original question, which is, you know, the positives and negatives of being a quote unquote successful band. And I think for speaking for all of us, like traveling together is probably the biggest positive. You know, negatives aside, like it's just great to get out. Like once the record's done, get out on the road, visit some crazy places that you never would go to if it weren't for the fact that you're in this band that is successful enough to get you there. Meet all these interesting people, see all these interesting places, eat all this delicious food. You know, just the whole experience of being in a band outside of all the other stuff that you have to do.
Yeah.
That stuff's really fun.
So the road hasn't gotten trying in that sense. It's still exciting to get out and tour.
No, and we're pretty good about it, right? Like we're gonna go
on the road together. It's just I don't know. When I hear about bands that are like that are fighting or that don't get along or something, or
Lincoln
like
Park has like 6 buses and every member's on a different bus or something.
No, we I think it's like our most natural habitat. It's being in transit, on the road, in dressing rooms, on stage, in airports, in vehicles. I don't know, something really congeals, and we just like assume this very well-worn and
we all kind of want to do the same things, and so we like, it's not like
we love each other.
It's not like we arrive in a city and everyone like fucks off to do their own like insular thing. We actually like, what are we doing now?
You still hang together.
Yeah, like,
which is a lot of bands start, right? Oh, we're friends, and then as it goes on and the years pass, eventually they kind of, oh, this is my job. So it's like, I'm not going to hang out with my coworkers.
Just that we have trouble making friends, so we just have to hang out together.
Nobody else wants to hang out with you?
Yeah, it's tough. No, but it doesn't escape us, I think, at least for me. I know how lucky we are to be doing this job after this long. It's every time we get up in front of an audience, there's it sounds so cliche, but I'm so grateful for that I started doing this so long ago. So many people do it for a while and then for whatever reason can't keep at it, and it's a big deal in this music climate to still be able to do this, because there's nothing else really I want to do. So I'm glad that
and whatever the negatives are seem petty in comparison to the positives. You know, I think for all of us it's like, you know, like, oh, so I have to like remember to like tweet something, or just people don't tweet anymore. I have to remember to put on
Instagram. People don't tweet anymore?
They tweet.
That's really not
Joel doesn't tweet anymore.
That's really, you're out of the Twitter game.
I am.
Well, the social media thing is kind of interesting, because I was reading the press release for Royal Blues, and it mentioned that Dan, you and Martina had broken up, and that in some ways maybe fueled this record. Was there ever any thought about not sharing that information, or was it so sort of important to the story of the record?
Every time we would do it, it's important to the story of the record, I think, but it's also important just as doing things like this, being a couple. It was every interview had the question in it. What's it like to be married?
So
it
was
like uncomfortably veiled in some indirect way, you know, like, so the lyrics of Royal Blues seem particularly like a breakup.
Yeah, we didn't want it to be like this awkward thing where it's like we were talking to somebody when it's always been part of the story that we're together, and so to be sitting somewhere and have it just kind of like, oh, sorry, we didn't tell you, but you're asking us this question. So it's in some ways it's weird to have to share that with everybody, but it was always, our personal relationship was always part of the conversation, and so to all of a sudden make it off limits, it seemed a bit unnatural.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's something interesting. I think I can't imagine, if someone goes through a breakup and then they write lyrics or they write music, they might even hold back because like, oh, I don't want to hurt somebody. Were there times when you guys were creating this record where maybe there were lyrics you didn't want to share, or like did it make the dynamic? Was there tension there?
Yes.
No tension.
Tension?
I never was privy to those lyrics. I would get the edited
get the finished song, but it was difficult. But I don't know how to write songs that aren't like, the only way I know how to write music is to kind of like get a pickaxe and like jab down into my deepest soul and bring whatever's there up. And so I think not to sing about what was going on would have resulted in probably nothing, or something that is not worth listening to. Or
did you guys, was there ever a thought of maybe not continuing on with the band?
For sure.
I don't think it wasn't a conversation. I think that we all individually were like probably wondering whether we could do it, but it wasn't like, hey, should we wrap this up? That was not that wasn't an outward conversation. It was probably an inward fear.
Yeah, and there's still many miles to go.
Of course.
With how the dynamic plays out. I mean, I think for me and Martina, the traveling together, like doing the kind of crazy shit that we've done up until now, the weird shows and the absurd sleeping schedules and all that stuff, like we had intrinsically we had each other to rely on, and Joel had to tough it out on his own, but I think there was a dynamic there that now is still in flux, and Joel again has had to tough it out, and
we always joke
baby Joel.
in interviews that my primary role is therapist, and it just so happens that I'm drummer.
Therapist. I have no idea. Joel is Switzerland.
Yeah. No, but that's what a therapist does.
I guess
they let you talk.
They let you talk, and they don't have an opinion.
But it is. I have thought about it. Just to be totally frank, is like I could have gone on I could have been on the road every day for my life. I love it. I love traveling. I lived in a bunch of different countries. I like the whole thing of it. But I felt very much like it was like, oh, I'm taking my family with me. I would always say, like, I have wherever you are, Martina, is where, like, that's where my home is. And I think that in the if you take that away, touring, and I have thought about it before. I don't know how I'm going to feel about being so rootless, and especially in the shadow of how rooted it all felt before.
Dan, are you breaking up with us right now?
Yeah, right. No, but it'll be an interesting dynamic. I think that it is.
No, I've thought about that as well.
It's an unknown going forward.
Yeah, whereas that was...
Well, the stability of it, there was inherent stability, and now there is a question mark of whether it's going to feel as much whether we're going to feel as much at home on the road. But we have little baby Joel, and see what it says.
Joel said it. Lastly, I was going to ask, it's always interesting to me when I talk to different people in bands at all levels of success. It's like, obviously you have to have a certain amount of talent. You have to be very good at writing your music or whatever it is, your craft, whatever you do, whether you're an actor or director. Yeah, a lot of followers, whether it's Instagram or Twitter. How much of it do you think is sort of luck and timing, and how much of it is sort of just talent and sort of inherent ability?
There's a lot.
That's a 50-50, I think. We caught an amazing break with every music project that I've been involved in has had one lucky break that gives you enough
inertia.
No, it accelerates you to a point where you get over maybe some of the worst humps, which is going from like 0 to, let's say, 1. So in the case of this band, we wrote one song that we sent to the guy who's now our manager, but had signed my other band, a long time ago to a record label, and I sent him this song asking him, what do you think of this song? And I remember him saying, do you want to sell this song? I can get this song sold. And I was like, no, actually, I think I'd like to start a band with my new wife, and this is really cool. And he's like, all right, well, do you want to open for Duran Duran and go on a tour for, play however many shows it was? I mean, I've condensed that story a little bit, but effectively,
of course,
from 0 to holy fuck, like this is what happens after like just writing a couple of songs in your basement. And from that, we got like a record deal in the UK, and which was simply because the guy who signed us was friends. They had been A&R guys together on opposite sides of the Atlantic. And Neil, our manager, sent Scott our record, and Scott had just got a job as an A&R guy like that week, the head of A&R for a new rebranding of Mercury Records in the UK. And so Scott was like flush with money and wanted to sign bands from all over the world, and he's like, fuck it, I'll take this band on 2 songs. And so all of that was luck. It was a
On
phone
two
call to a
songs
guy.
and like not any touring.
2 songs and 8 shows.
And just kind of get your stage legs as you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if that's not luck, like I don't know what is but at the same time we wouldn't have gotten there had we not, delivered a relatively good song. Or
Yeah,
really
I think
good
the song was interesting and unique, and that wasn't the
Yeah.
sound that was happening right now. It was something that felt a little bit future, and so I think that garnered some interest and some futures betting.
But
Yeah,
the
there's
criteria
plenty-
changes a
There's
lot.
plenty examples of amazing talent that doesn't go anywhere because there's a lack of I don't know, luck, or even just the ability to engage the right people to help you out. And it's you can't have one without the other, really. I think you got to have the songs to back it up,
And the ambition, so that when a
And
door
the
opens,
ambition.
you got to walk through it.
Yeah.
Exactly. But that when the door opening doesn't always happen, or doesn't always happen easily. You kind of have to create a scenario where the door might open for you, and then when it does, you gotta run through it.
Yeah. Thanks so much for your time, guys.
Thank you.
Welcome to the dessert. I am here with my friend and pop culture aficionado, Shane Cunningham. Shane, what's going on?
Yo, are we going to address why Max isn't here?
Yeah, let's do it. He was in the opening, which we recorded a few days ago.
And then on that day, I was feeling like, I don't know, unconfident or something, like I was like shook or something.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't, I'm always like, anytime I come in here, a lot of times I don't have a set idea. I just have little like various topics I write in my little book. But then I had a bad experience where I actually like planned out a story really well. And then the Trump thing happened and it totally ruined my planning.
Right.
When an experience happens, you get nervous when that same ingredients are there.
Okay, so for our listeners, when Max and I were recording this podcast like 2 days ago, Shane was supposed to come in and do his pop culture bit. He came in, we're like, hey, you ready to do this? And you just were like...
I kind of froze. Like I had like a little panic and I just started like getting nervous around my friends, which is a weird thing, right? Like,
And the reason this happened is because in the last episode, the day we recorded it the day after Trump was elected, you came in with what you thought was a really fun and sort of like good story and you planned it. But Max and I were giving you nothing but sort of negative energy because of the Trump thing. So you felt shook.
I tried bringing stuff up in the Trump thing. Sometimes like ignorance can be funny, So,
Yeah.
So sometimes just as a conversation starter, I'll try to say something that sounds a certain way as almost like a gateway to conversation. But then you guys weren't taking the bait. So all that was left was just my ignorant comments. And I know how people get about politics. So then I had to ask for all my comments to be removed. So I was kind of taken out of the first thing. Anyway, I was kind of shook. So we had to do this a week after Max did his opening. So that's why Max isn't here.
That's right. But now it's just me and you. You're in a safe place, Shane.
I've been trying to find a way to get back on track. And then kind of like this like gift fell out of the sky in the form of a movie premiere. Like there's this man I've been trying to track down literally for years. His name is Frank D'Angelo.
You have been talking about this guy for a long time.
So, and it's more than I've been talking about him. I've been obsessed with him. This man, just to give a little background to the people listening, he is a millionaire. I guess he's a billionaire now. If you go to networth.com, he's actually a billionaire with a B.
Is he an apple juice billionaire?
He started with Napoli Foods. His dad owned Napoli Foods, and then they sold that to Saputo, and then he parlayed that money into D'Angelo apple juice.
Yeah.
Which then he made Steelback Brewery, which then he made Cheetah energy drinks, which then he used that money to fund like a late night talk show. And that was my first introduction to him. He has this kind of like cable access talk show where he's kind of like, if you've seen the movie Casino, he's kind of like Robert De Niro.
Yeah, and is the deal like you buy like infomercial time, but then just have your own talk show, like a self-funded show? He's the producer of his own show.
Yeah, and it's very fascinatingly strange. And I just couldn't stop watching. And then throughout every ad on his talk show are ads for D'Angelo Juice, Cheetah energy drinks, and his movies. So
this guy also makes movies.
he's made 5 movies in the last 3 years. So
Yeah.
he makes, and when I say movies, like he has Oscar nominated actors, like former A-list actors. Well, I'll just go through the
Go
list.
through the list.
He has James Caan, Oscar winner Martin Landau, Oscar nominee Eric Roberts, Paul Sorvino, Mira Sorvino, Daniel Baldwin, Chris Christopherson, Michael Pear, he's from Eddie and the Cruisers, so
Yeah,
that's
I remember,
probably least famous. Margot Kidder, who played
Superman.
Lois Lane.
Yeah.
And
Both Canadians.
Doris Roberts, who's the mom from Everybody Loves Raymond. Michael Madsen from Reservoir Dogs fame. And Daryl Hannah, who plays his wife in Sicilian Vampire, a movie where he plays an Italian vampire.
Who's also like
who gets
into the
bitten
mob.
by a bat out of a banana box when he's going to eat bananas. Like, you would be so surprised how many people are obsessed with Frank D'Angelo.
There was a big article about him on Grantland, Bill Simmons' old site.
There's tons of articles, Mike. They're like written every day, and like hilarious reviews about his movies. It's a lot like James Franco's doing a movie based on the guy who made the movie The Room.
Yep.
It's very similar to that, mixed with like a little bit of Foxcatcher. Like even Frank, like presumably paid an MMA fighter to kind of like lose in a match. Like
Yeah.
he does strange things that are fascinating, but he's totally with it. He makes jokes. Like, you know, he's not nuts. He's just crazy in that good, fun way. Down the street, literally a stone's throw from me, he's doing his Canadian premiere for his latest film. Like, what are the odds of all the places? It's literally, I could hit the premiere venue with the Stone.
I know that theater. It's like around the corner from your
The
place.
Zoetic Theater in Hamilton.
Yeah. I mean, maybe for our listeners, how does he get all of these sort of notable actors?
Well, that was one of the reasons why I went to the screening. I had my suspicions, but I wanted. There's a Q&A after the film, presumably.
Okay, back it up. So you find out this guy's doing a premiere around the corner from your place. How do you secure tickets for this sort of cult
I buy them
figure?
a week in advance, but it turns out that one of our friends having their bachelor party that night.
A friend of ours, we were throwing like a bachelor event for one of our friends who's getting married. Yes.
But honestly, I would have missed your wedding to go to. I seriously would have, because I've been on the
don't doubt
hunt.
it.
I've been on the hunt for this guy forever.
You almost missed my wedding just because you were boozing the night before.
Yeah, that's true. So I rush home from work. The premiere's at 7. I just get in. Alex is wearing all dressed up in a dress, wearing her fur coat. I'm all dressed up in dress clothes, wearing my fur coat. And I'm kidding. I don't have a fur coat, but we walk in, and I'm just wondering: is it going to be a packed theater? Are the celebrities going to be there?
Is there a red carpet?
Is there a red carpet? Is it going to be empty? Is Frank going to be there? Like, so as soon as I walk in, the theater is packed. It's a very big theater too. So I wanted to sit at the front anyway. And luckily there was only like 3 seats available right at the front. Mm-hmm. We sit down, the movie starts, and then I look around. Everyone's in suits and everyone looks like they're like his Italian buddies, like very respectful. It's not a crowd like me, which is just fascinated lookers on, just wanting to see the spectacle of it.
These guys are legitimate. They want to go to the cinema and have a night out for the premiere of this film.
Yeah, but in my mind, I thought I could kind of whisper to my wife and we could kind of have a fun night out. But I'm like, oh shit, if I'm disrespectful, I'm going to get like whacked or something, you know? Anyway, the movie ends.
Standing O?
No standing O. It's just kind of awkward. Everyone's confused. Smattering of applause. Frank gets on stage. No, a guy introduced him. He's like, there'll be a Q&A. People are called on stage. Frank gets on stage. A couple of the actors. Daniel Baldwin's actually there.
All right.
So I'm like an inch away from Daniel Baldwin. And he goes, all right, any questions? Waits 2 seconds. There's no questions. He goes, all right. He gets kind of nervous. He goes, I'm going to pass it down through the cast and crew. But in that, I found out he shoots these 2.5-hour movies in 3 days.
Holy shit.
With 8 cameras. And the budget's between $2 and $5 million. So presumably he pays the A-listers like a $70,000 a day rate, shoots them in a few hours. They go home, movies wrap for them, and it's hugely beneficial for them because it's like 4 hours of their time to make $70,000, and then he gets a movie and he can say James Caan's in it.
Think only 70?
I would think so. Yeah, just
And travel expenses, like, so they
4
fly him
hours,
in.
Flies him down. Strange. The whole movie, you can't describe the experience. You'd like to think that the comedy is intentional, but it's definitely, probably not. But I've got questions for the Q&A. Anyway, I talked to Frank, and he's in for being a guest. But now we got to do it or we're going to get whacked. Want to pick his brain on the process and really get down to the nitty gritty of how this guy does this shit and why. Like, he's obviously the star of all the movies.
Yeah.
But why does he want to star in all the movies? Is it just for the fame? Is he actually trying to make art house films? Is he doing like a thing like The Room? Like, is he kind of with us? I really want to know. So
he writes these movies too, right?
He doesn't just write. He produces them, he writes them, he directs them, he scores the film, and all of his songs that aren't scored for the film. Like, if a song comes on the radio within the film, it'll be a Frank D'Angelo song.
Got you. So this guy's a one-stop
Like,
shop.
we thought Max was an extreme narcissist. Like, this guy honestly takes the cake.
That's it. That's all. That's our episode. Want to thank Dragonette.
You can find us on the internet at Twitter and Instagram at Mike on Much. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes. Tell your friends about it. The more the merrier. A huge thank you to Jenna Gregory at jennasdoodles.com for providing the artwork. A shout out to Kristen Nicholas, our gal. She arranged a little fitting at Top Shop. Who outfitted for us for this little promo spot that we did. We look fly as hell, all because of Kristen and Topman. So thank you for that.
The Mike and Much podcast is produced by Max Kerman. I'm your host, Mike Veerman. See you next week if we don't die on the weekend.